Good afternoon. We're going to call the November 16th, 2020 DoSE Advisory Group to order at 1 p.m. today. I'm just going to review the purpose of the committee. We haven't met in a while, so the purpose is the Director of Special Education Advisory Group was created to advise the Office of Special Education and Early Learning, OSEAL, on issues relevant to special education. The DoSE Advisory Group consists of 9 members, who each represent a special education cooperative region of Kentucky. The members of this group provide valuable feedback and engage with Kentucky school districts to provide support for special education. These group members, we meet with the OSEAL staff in person, obviously virtually now, to discuss needs in the area of special education and with the OSEAL priorities, and this feedback is used to help share the guidance and support being provided by the OSEAL staff. So welcome everyone. Let's do roll call real quick to see if we have a quorum today. Just remember to unmic yourself and speak clearly. So I'm going to Wendy Congleton.
Present.
Okay. Barry Goley. Greta Stanfield.
Here.
Tracy Sharp.
Here.
Larry Joe Begley. I think he said he's going to be out. Jody Hall.
Present.
Mandy Bird. Troy Cobb.
Here.
Kim Chevalier. Here. All right. We have a quorum. So the first order of business is to review the minutes from our August 19th meeting. And those were provided to you by Joe. So if you want just to take just a minute to review those, and then I'll take a vote. All right, is there a motion to approve the August 19th, 2020 minutes? Can I get a first?
So moved.
Was that you're gonna have to say your name because I can't see you. Jody?
Yes. Who was it?
Okay, Jody Hall. Second, please.
This is Wendy Congleton. I'll second.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, all in favor, and I will take roll one more time. Wendy Congleton.
Yes.
Barry Goley. Greta Stanfield.
Here.
Okay. Tracy Sharp.
Yes. Here.
Larry Joe Bigley. Okay. Jody Hall.
Yes, here.
Okay. Mandy Bird. Troy Cobb.
Yes.
And Kim Chevalier, yes. So the minutes of the August 19th, 2020 DoSE Advisory Committee passes. And to begin, we have Greta Hilton here, the KDE Associate Commissioner. So thank you, Greta, for being here, and I'm going to let you take over from here.
All right, thanks, Kim.
Uh-huh.
So first off, let me say welcome to everybody that's on the call. And just before we got started, we were talking about the reality of what most people know as Zoom fatigue, and we'll just call it Teams fatigue or virtual fatigue or whatever this is that we're in. So so I do appreciate you taking time today to be here. I know lots of things are going on in everybody's lives, and it almost seems like right now everything's quite the effort. So first, just let me acknowledge that and say thank you for everything that you're doing every day within your schools and districts. Right now is a super difficult time, and it's a super difficult time for your teachers and your families and your staffs. And I know your plates are not just full, they're heaping over. And so I really want to keep today as informative as possible. And, my update is going to be super short because I want to allow some time for you guys to ask questions and engage in any types of conversations around questions or concerns that you may have. And so we've invited several of the KDE OSIL staff to be on the call because I know there are some things that are on people's minds, especially this time of year. So the first thing that I want to share with you, we have a brand new commissioner, Dr. Jason Glass, who I think some of you have met or seen on webcast. And he's been with us, I guess, about 2 months now. And so we have actually also hired Dr. Thomas Woods Tucker, who is a KDE's first Chief Equity Officer, as well as the Associate over the Office of Teaching and Learning and Deputy Commissioner. So his plate's going to be super full. And currently, right now, Dr. Woods Tucker is working with all office policy advisors, and Dr. Thomas Williams is working on that for OSIL. And I'll introduce you to Thomas in a moment if we haven't already. I can't remember. But there you are, Thomas. So Dr. Thomas Williams is the newest addition to the Office of Special Education and Early Learning in the policy advisor role. With our shop, and he is working across the office to look at the initiatives that we have in OSIL related to equity and anti-racism. And all policy advisors are doing that currently and working with Dr. Woods Tucker to really just do an environmental scan of the agency to see what's going on as we determine how this work should look as we move forward. So Thomas, if you would like, not to put you on the spot, you certainly don't have to share anything, but if you would like to at least introduce yourself and share anything with the group, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you, Greta. So again, my name is Thomas Williams, and it's a pleasure to be in this meeting today. I think I've been with KDE and OSIL, I want to say maybe 3 months now, possibly 3 months. But it's been great, working with everyone and learning the culture and just learning KDE and learning Kentucky. I transitioned or moved here from Oakland, California, where I served as an early learning principal. So again, I'm happy to be working with KDE and OSIL, and I look forward to partnering with each and every one of you. And I do want to also mention the equity work that I will be supporting throughout the office. So I'm currently working to support the initiative that we've been doing to just continue to work in equity. And I'm going to work really closely with Dr. Woods Tucker to ensure that the initiatives continue. So again, it's a pleasure to meet each of you virtually, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Thomas. And also, David Wickersham is a brand new addition to OSIL, not new to KDE. And so I apologize. I actually misspoke when I said Thomas was the newest. He's not the newest. David actually came on just a few weeks ago, and many of you will remember David Wickersham from his work within the agency several years ago when he worked in the Office of Legal Services, and then actually worked in the Office of Continuous Improvement and Supports for a while, and most recently has been in the Office of Educational Accountability. And David has joined us for this call, and so he'll be available as well to offer any input and answer any questions that you may have. So those are some new staffing situations that we have at the office and across KDE. And one of the things that, first off, let me ask you this. Do you have any questions about that before I move forward into the work? Okay. So probably one of the biggest things that's on people's mind is the DMS 2.0, the differentiated monitoring and support. And so I wanted to take just a moment and talk to you briefly about this. I shared it at the Regional Special Education Cooperative meeting earlier in the month. And I think just because of word of mouth, it's gotten out there. But I did want to take just a minute, talk to you about it, and then answer any questions that you have. So the differentiated monitoring and supports, many of you will remember last beginning of year training that we came around to the co-ops and we talked about that Kentucky had always received had recently received a meets requirements in the DMS. And we anticipated that DMS would become part of maybe the annual determinations that we receive, just like the annual determinations that you receive as an LEA. However, that's not the direction that it went. It went into a full-blown monitoring activity, and they've coined the term DMS 2.0, which is interesting because it's not at all like DMS 1.0. So what they have done, they being OSEP, the Office of Special Education Programs, is they have pulled back out the IDA General Supervision puzzle pieces, and those of you that have been around a while will remember those components. Dusted that off a little bit and said, this is how we're going to monitor you. And so they chose 7 states, I believe that's right, 7 for parts B and C, and 8 for part C, because New York's part B program wasn't included. So they chose these states to be cohort 1 and come in and monitor these states. They told us right out of the gate that they didn't have all the protocols developed. So we literally just received the fiscal subrecipient monitoring protocol, I guess about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month at this point, with fiscal, with them telling us that fiscal would be the first area of general supervision that we would be monitored for. We had one initial call with OSEP, and they went through the protocol, told us that basically we would be receiving additional follow-up calls, scheduled a couple follow-up calls, and then fast forward to, I guess it was last week, they have told us they've canceled the calls, and they've told states that there will be no calls through the month of November. And quite frankly, OSEP has been awkwardly silent on why this is the case, or how we will be moving forward, or if we will be moving forward. They're not saying that they're canceling the monitoring by any means, but I anticipate that, you know, given the political climate and the election and things like that that are going on in DC, and the possibilities of some turnover within USED, particularly at those higher level cabinet positions, that there may indeed be some changes. So I don't have any inside information, but I anticipate that they're just waiting to see the direction that the department plans to go. So that's where we are with that. Do you have any particular questions around that? I know if you're like we are, you have nothing but questions really, and you don't even know what to ask just yet because we haven't really gotten too far into it. But I'll pause and see if you have any questions or thoughts or concerns. And let me say this, not most, but a lot of the monitoring of the states is really about how well we're monitoring local districts. So it's a trickle down concept, if you will. All right, so if there's no questions about that, then the next thing I'm going to move on into, and this is probably where we can have some additional conversations, because this is probably on your minds, considering the time of year, is December 1 child count. We're getting a lot of questions around December 1 child count, lots of concerns about federal dollars and how federal dollars will be impacted as a result of child count. And it's made me keenly aware that we probably haven't done the best job we could of explaining how districts receive funds. And so we've got Carla Miller and Chris Thacker are on the line, and you know, they're here to help answer any questions that you have regarding funding and that sort of thing. But please help me get information out to districts that federal funds really are not contingent upon that December 1 child count. Now, some of the exceptional child add-on funds are, but the federal funds are not. So I'm just going to stop talking about that and let you ask the questions that you may have, and then let the fiscal people help provide some information around that.
Greta, I'll start because, but I'm also taking notes. So like, I've got to figure out how to word it and then capture it too. But we had our co-op meeting on Friday, and they had some very good questions around the financial implications of December 1 child count. And one of the big questions that they have is it possible for the SEEK, make sure I get this right, is it possible for the funding to remain the same much as we have done for the SEEK funding, where we have left it level? Because the concern among my group of individuals is that a lot of students are unaccounted for, have gone home, have gone to homeschool, etc. during the pandemic, but they will be back. And they will likely be back before the next December 1 child count. So we will be serving those students. I mean, they could come back in January, so to speak. So is that a possibility? Has it been discussed? And what might those next steps look like?
This is Chris. I will attempt to, unless Greta, you want to go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to say, that I was going to ask Chris or Carla to jump in.
Obviously, when we look at the SEEK exceptional child add-on, those funds are based upon the December 1 child count for ages 5 through 20. It does not include 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, or 21-year-olds, although there's not very many 21-year-olds reported. So when we look at that 5 through 20 and we send those counts to the OFO, Che Ritter, who's the division director that computes that information, we provide them, of course, the specific disabilities for each district, because it is a weighted funding process, and they ultimately make the call, I guess, as to how that's going to occur. Up to this point, it's always been, a strict formula that applies a weight to each disability and multiplies that weight times whatever the guaranteed base amount is for the regular SEEK funding. For the past 2 or 3 years, it's been $4,000 is the base amount. So you apply the weight of a child identified as mild mental disability, which is 1.17 times $4,000, and that's the amount of SEEK exceptional child add-on funds that particular child would generate. For the less frequently identified disability categories, such as FMD, HI, and so on, that weight is 2.35, so it gets multiplied by that $4,000 figure, and that's the amount of funds those children generate. Because they are making some exceptions in the SEEK funding formula as to how they're counting attendance and how that's going to work, we don't know what that office is going to do around the SEEK exceptional child add-on. They have had some indication that they're setting aside the same amount of funds that they normally do to do this, but they haven't made any confirmed responses as this is exactly what is going to occur when we start applying that formula. And it may simply be that they say and I'm just going to throw a figure out here just off the top of my head, it's not right or anything, but say if we've been providing $400 million each year for SEEK exceptional child add-on funds, they've not said we're going to continue to maintain $400 million. But there is incentive for them to do so, because under the IDEA, the state has to continue to make available funds to provide special education at the same level or increase it, much like a local district has to maintain effort through the MOE process. The state has to do something called state maintenance of financial support, which means we have to make available the same amount of money. Doesn't necessarily mean we have to spend it, but we have to make it available. And SEEK is by far biggest pot of that. So if that were to go down significantly, then that would put us in jeopardy of losing significant amounts of IDA funds. So nobody wants to do that. So there's incentive there is what I'm trying to get at for our SCA to continue to make those funds available at the same level. Now, if they do that,
No,
how
when they-
then are we going to distribute it becomes a different issue. Would we look at that child count that's depressed, perhaps? Because it looks like in preliminary results that child count might be 5 to 10% less this coming year than what it has been in previous years. We don't know that, but the potential is there for that to occur. So if that does occur, are they going to go back and look at what your child count was from last year to do that and calculate the Seek Exceptional Child add-on? Those are discussions that have not been brought to us yet. We have voiced concerns about it ourselves as OSIL. The OFO who makes those ultimate decisions hasn't responded yet to us as to what their proposal is, other than an unofficial remark that they intend to probably have about the same amount of funds set aside for Seek Exceptional Child add-on as they have in the past. So we'll ultimately have to see how that pans itself out. As Greta indicated, when we talk about IDEA funds, those aren't impacted by the child count on December 1, but they are impacted by the number of kids K through 12 who are enrolled in your district or enrolled in private parochial schools located in your district. And there are some things going on with the attendance people as to how they're counting those children for the coming year or the year that we're in right now. So that might have some impact. But again, we don't anticipate the federal funds being changed very much at all, simply because child count doesn't impact it. But it may be distributed a little bit differently given that, however, the OFO people determined to provide data on membership of each individual district in the K-12 programs. I know that's not a solid answer, but that's about as clear as we can get it at this point.
Well, it sounds like there's hope.
There's hope,
hopeful.
yes.
And just so I've got this correct, there's a maintenance of financial support that is required at the state level, that it stay the same. Is that what you said?
Under the IDEA, they had the state maintenance of financial support.
Okay.
Which means that the state has to make available. Make available is different than maintenance of effort that local districts have. Local districts have to spend to be in compliance. The state only has to make available, which is kind of like the eligibility component of the MOE for a district where you're supposed to budget as much as you've had in previous years. But when it looks at that, it's not just what the KDE makes available, it's what all state agencies make available that provide services to students with disabilities. And there are other agencies that provide quite a lot of services as well. One of the things that is a big component of what the state makes available are those on behalf payments that the states make for LEAs for state-funded special education staff at the local level. So when you pay a teacher out of the general fund and the state pays for their retirement and their health insurance, and I think life insurance, then that's part of what funds the state makes available that we look at as well in maintaining that effort. So there's a lot of things that come to play in that formula that it's not a clear, quick answer to tell you that we're going to meet it in any given year. It's been close a few years.
Okay. What is the name of that office that you're referring to?
The Office of Finance and Operations, I think is Robin's office.
Yeah, that's correct.
Did I say Robin? It's not a right name, is it?
Yes, it's Robin Kenny.
Yeah, okay, Robin Kenny. And Che is the person who works with the Seek funding and the Seek Exceptional Child add-on. Che Ritter. I think he's the division director now, isn't he, Carla?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful to know.
You're welcome.
Our group has another December 1 child count question, if you want me to go ahead and
Sure.
ask that while I'm here. And it's geared toward the report that's being run once a week to look at the numbers and matching that up. And the question from our group is it possible that last week it could be done every day so that there could be a comparison on a daily basis? Our larger districts are concerned that the amount of changes from one week to the next week could be so much that there could be details lost in that. So is it possible to run that every day that last week?
That is a good question, and we appreciate that. Amy, did you jump on?
I'm on
Okay,
here.
I'll let you answer.
Okay. So unfortunately, the answer to that is no, and it's not a decision that we make. It's just how Infinite Campus works. In order to have the most accurate child count, we have to run it from district data, not from state edition. And if we run it from the district data and it hits the district, like every district, the performance issues, it's just going to lock up every time. So we have to use what's called reporting warehouse. And the reporting warehouse is updated every weekend. So, so does that make sense? So every like Saturday, they run this. So any changes after close of business on Friday won't be reflected until the next weekend. But the thing to remember is the IDEA December 1 count extract, that is the same report that we use for our state report.
Okay.
So it's going to be the exact same data except for students who are enrolled in 2 different districts. And then we look at the enrollment type and where they were enrolled last. But other than that, that data is going to be the exact same data. I've checked that many, many, many times. So I feel pretty confident in saying that.
So Amy, are you saying that the local district could run their December 1 child count
yes,
and get that data different each day?
Yes. Even, I think, within an hour, maybe.
Okay.
And then, I mean, you still want to check it against the Monday report that we run. But I feel, 99.5% confident in saying it's going to be that accurate. So, and, I mean, I'm not going to let people hang either. I mean, if kids are missing, I'm not going to be like, nope, sorry, you can't count them.
Right.
Well, we'll be reasonable about it. It's a new process and it's scary, but it'll be okay. So.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
No problem.
And I think that's all from us on December 1 child count. So I'll let others speak up. Yeah,
I got to jump off here in about 10 minutes to do a training for newbies. So if you have any other questions, now's the best time to ask.
Amy, this is Kim Chevalier. I just want to thank you and the department for being available for questions at all times. Communication for the December 1 count has been phenomenal this year, so we greatly appreciate it, especially during this time. So I do want to give the department a shout out for that. I think you've been there for us and have been very helpful. So thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Absolutely. And I want to second that. We appreciate the support and the openness and the availability and just being downright approachable more than you can ever imagine. So thank you so much for that support.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. So as far as updates from OSIL, those are really the big buckets of important information in addition to everything that you guys probably already know. That's, we're just kind of hanging out and watching time pass, right? Much like you all are. Very little going on.
Yes, we're all doing much the same thing.
Unfortunately, the days never seem to look any different. But I learned a long time ago, you got to be careful what you ask for. So I'll just back up from that and walk away. It's probably fine like it is. I mean, as far as updates, that's all I've got, unless you have questions or concerns. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to Kim to move us through the agenda.
All right, quick reminder for our members, if you guys can turn your cameras on. I know we're all tired of being on camera every second of the day, but if you don't mind turning your cameras on, that would be great, so all the beautiful people out there can see us. Okay, what do we have next? The school, are we at the school district sharing, or Greta, have you done all your proposed changes? Are you?
No, we can talk about that.
Okay.
Yep.
Proposed changes to the regulation. Thank you.
Yep. So, and this is an agenda item, proposed changes to regulation 707 KR 1340. Couple of things. This is really just more of an informational item for you guys. In looking at this regulation, there was some outdated language that needed to be removed. That actually what it did was it incorporated by reference the forms to or for a dispute resolution. And so that was problematic for a variety of reasons, but primarily because it still had the mailing address as 500 Miro Street, and it was attention Larry Taylor. So that's how old it's been. So in order, obviously, to update the form, we had to open the reg, because you can't update forms that are incorporated by reference without a regulation update. So we proposed that, took it to the Kentucky Board of Education for the first read for that. And then the other area, since we had the reg open, we were looking at the notice of ARC and prior written notice. There's been some confusion across the Commonwealth for a little while around the differences between notice of ARC and prior written notice. So what we did was just basically cleaned up that language to mirror the federal language, so that we brought some clarification to that. It's pretty basic and very minimal in nature. So we took it to the board for the first read a couple of meetings ago. I can't remember the exact meeting, and it will go back before the Board of Education in December for the second read, and then move through the process. And of course, there will be a public comment period and things like that that will be available as with any other regulation change. So pretty basic, straightforward changes. Any questions, thoughts on that?
Greta, this is Kim. Does that mean, like, when we go back, if we have any of our procedures, will we have to change our procedures again to mirror that? We have anything that remotely says that? Because it's been a while, I'm sure, since some of us have looked at procedures.
Probably wouldn't hurt to take a look at it, just to make sure you don't have any district policy that would be tied to it. Although I will say that it's really just about updating the language. If you know, in Kentucky, we rely heavily on the notice of ARC contents as well as the conference summary contents for prior written notice, which just basically says, you know, that parents or guardians must be given notice prior to any changes. I started to say approved or denied, but at any rate, any changes. And I think probably that's in most of your policies, but I'd take a quick look just to be sure.
And then
don't do that until everything's been approved.
And then one more follow-up, that any of our forms are not going to be changed due to this change in the regulation. Like
the forms in Infinite Campus?
Mm-hmm.
Probably more training than a change of forms. At this point now, there, you know, if we get down the road and I see that there needs to be a change, obviously we'll bring it back to you guys for suggestions. But at this point, I don't anticipate that we'll need to tinker with Infinite Campus too much. It may just be, you know, some training, you know, that this has happened, you know, that and to be fair, we could probably improve a lot of understanding or misunderstanding around prior written notice and notice of ARC. And it's just because Kentucky uses that language of notice of ARC. And so that notice and then prior written notice gets people confused, and people tend to think that prior written notice requires the 7 days, and really that's just a training issue. That's not a regulatory issue, it's just training. So I think we can handle most of this through some training that we'll roll out. But if we tinker with the forms, we'll tell you. One of the forms we obviously will change will be the dispute resolution form, so we can actually say on that it will be mailed to the appropriate mailing address, which is 300 Sauer Boulevard instead of 500 Miro Street. And that causes quite a bit of confusion. When parents start to mail that in, and then we're like, oh, well, yeah, but don't send it there, send it here. I mean, it's just unnecessary confusion.
Perfect. Thank you. Is there any other questions?
So again, from our meeting on Friday, we had conversation around this regulation change. And the big question that came up among our group was, with the regs being open for this change, is it possible to look at other changes that may be needed?
Yeah, it's always possible to to look at changes. Absolutely. We just want to be sure that the time is right and that we're looking at things that really need regulatory changes and not simply training or professional development. Lots of things we can work with within the reg, right? Because a lot of it's within the policy and the practices and the procedures, because regs allow for a lot of flexibility. So sometimes I think it's just a matter of us sitting down, particularly with, LEAs or districts that are having concerns, to talk about, is there a way to do this more effectively through training, keeping in mind that when we open up the reg, we open up the entire reg, and it's about a 9-month process from start to finish. So if people are needing and looking for quick fixes, it's certainly not the regulatory process that will get them there. But we can always look at that. So, we're always open to suggestions as we move forward.
So I will share some specific information directly with you from our meeting on Friday then, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is school district sharing and question and answer session. So that is directed to our group and our members of our group. So just unmute yourself and speak your name and we can have discussion.
I think everybody's in survival mode.
I agree.
I'll bring up a point real quick. This is Troy Cobb, Bullitt County. One issue that we've got coming up here that I directed towards our OVEC friends today, and then I said I would ask this group. With regards to related service providers, such as therapy providers specifically, think OT, SLP. We've got students that during NTI are traveling outside of the state with their parents, not just on vacation, which would be like a one-time kind of thing. This is a father works on the road, so the child is with them, but participating in NTI. We're hearing that therapy cannot take place outside of state lines. So I was wondering your all's opinion on that, if you all have run into that and how you think we can proceed.
Greta, if it's okay with you, I don't mind to answer this question.
Of course, yes, go ahead.
This is Sylvia. So I have been in contact with ASHA, and I'll be honest, I use Tennessee as an example. There was a district who reached out to me about the same information and asked specifically of what was going on, and kind of had some back and forth with ASHA. And so I asked for some clarification, and we're still kind of working through it. Tennessee apparently in general is a little bit more complicated than other states. He sent me an email that just basically said, because the person in question is a student and not a client in a healthcare setting, it gives a little bit more leeway. He said that most state licensing boards can claim jurisdiction over the provision of services to any person residing in their borders, but some states like Tennessee don't have just jurisdiction over school-based clients. And so it depends on the state. There's a whole lot of working through, but he did say that the best advice that he could provide was to contact the state's licensure board and to inquire about the situation. And he said that his guess was that the board would not consider the student to be in their jurisdiction. However, if the speech language provider doesn't hear from the board directly, and we just use speech as an example, and given the 30-day allowance in certain states and the specific circumstances of a situation, they wouldn't face much risk in continuing services to the client if they will only be in that state for a short period of time. So it wouldn't constitute a violation of ASHA rules if students are going just to travel. I think it becomes more problematic when they're gone for longer periods of time. They're there for more than 30 days. He and I are continuing a conversation about this, and I anticipate that I'll put something together that I could clearly kind of say what is going on and how do you handle it. But with Tennessee, it kind of caused some issues, and so I'd like to check all of the bordering states to Kentucky to see if there's any other particular situations that could come up that we need to specifically address, just like we would need to specifically say, here's exactly how you handle things in Tennessee, here's the number for Ohio, here's the number for Indiana and Illinois and all of those bordering states. So it might take me a little bit of time to process it, but know that we're working on this and that we realize that that's becoming more of an issue than before. But it sounds like from ASHA's perspective that they're saying it's okay to go ahead and continue if the student is only traveling for a short period of time. Like the kid goes on vacation for a week and they log on while they're on vacation, then they're saying that it's fine. It doesn't constitute a violation of ASHA rules to do that one time. But if it's, I think over a longer period of time is where it becomes problematic.
Okay.
So
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks, Troy. Can we say then, just to summarize, I want to make sure I get this right, that typically the first line of defense would be to go to the state, send a message to the state?
Yes, send a message to the state's licensure board.
Okay, and then if we don't hear back, that continue to provide services to the student, and traveling, I would say maybe that they're not a permanent resident or haven't gotten residency in that state. Correct. Could that be, to clarify that? Because sometimes when we say vacation, people think of it as a short term, but if they're traveling and they're there for a couple months, but they still don't have residency, right? They're just renting or staying there for a couple months, and we know they're going to be back.
Yeah, and I can double check on the residency piece of that because I know residency can get kind of complicated. So I'm happy to check with, legal on residency in general to see if that plays in and how all those things would be handled. But it sounds like maybe there's a need, from what I'm hearing from you guys and the conversations that I've been getting over email, that there may be a need for additional guidance for what to do when they log in out of state. Would that be correct?
Yes, thank you. Right. More questions, discussion?
This is probably a really bad time to bring this up, but nevertheless, so here's my thoughts on that. And I know this is often one of the more complicated arenas to tap dance in, but if the student is still enrolled in that local school district, then the school district is still responsible for providing FAPE, and as part of FAPE would be related services, right? So I don't see any way around it. I mean, that's just my knee-jerk reaction without having all the facts. So anyway, like I said, really bad time to put that out there, but
and it is I think a big issue in the northeastern states. We had the same discussion on one of my national policy calls, where you have kids in Jersey, going over to Connecticut to stay with grandparents. But I think, like Sylvia said, and all we discussed there, it all came back to that licensure board. But I mean, I have kids. I'm a border state with Ohio, and right now I have kids in foster care, but they go to Ohio every other week to try to reunite with a father. So, yeah, am I going to make them go enroll in Ohio? No, it just makes sense for me to continue services.
I think that's what Asha's kind of point was. This, we really talked a lot about if you're a Kentucky resident with enrollment in a Kentucky district, but you travel for whatever reason, and you never enroll, what do we do there? And they tend to seem to say that it wouldn't be a violation of ASHA policy to do those things. Now, I mean, that's ASHA, so that handles speech, right? So we haven't talked to OT and PT, but that's a conversation that we'll continue to move forward with and provide extra guidance as soon as we hear from it.
And I do believe this is going to be an issue moving forward for a lot of just states in general, right? Because for the mental health piece of it, I mean, related services that they're going to go, especially like in Northern Kentucky. And like you said, if you're bordering that, the mental health is available in Cincinnati. So the kids are going to go there, and we continue now with virtual learning, we can provide that. So what is our obligation, maybe through OSEP, what is the guidance across the United States as far as giving services if they're not formally enrolled? Or they're enrolled, time period in a different state or residence, or how do we put that in a neat little box and say when we can and can't provide services, all services, truly.
I think that's exactly it. In the broader context, that's what's going to come out of the pandemic for special education, right? Like that and so many more things that we never ever thought about because we've never as a world been in a place like this. And we've said so many times the IDEA, wasn't even written for things that we had experienced in 2019 with regard to discipline and behavior and the way that things have changed. It just didn't fit well. And it certainly doesn't fit well in 2020 in a virtual environment where people are living in ways that we never anticipated that we would live. But at the end of the day, I still come back to that. If that student is enrolled in that district, the district is responsible for providing FAPE, and as part of FAPE is our related services. And so you have to make it happen some way, shape, or form until we get some type of flexibility, if any exists, right, from the federal level. And quite frankly, I don't anticipate to see any more flexibilities than what we've already seen, which is minimal to none. And so it's just a difficult situation for everybody, but great questions, just no great answers to accompany them.
Just know that we're continuing to look into this, and as soon as we get some really clear answers, we'll reach those out and make sure that the districts have that information. But this is a recent conversation, as recent as last week we were having with Tim Boyd. So I appreciate the question. Thanks for bringing it up, Troy.
Okay. We have a handful of parents that are completely refusing virtual services. So, do we just document that and let the IEP ride, or do we exit kids?
Oh, Greta, that's the question of the year. And we've talked about that with the National Association for State Directors because so many states are having this same situation. Parents are tired, kids are tired, grandparents are tired, everybody in the house is tired. And, my pre-pandemic response, which probably aligns with the law a little better, and David can he can jump in and provide some additional information if I overspeak this, but my pre-pandemic response would have been, if you create all the attempts that you need to and the parent refuses services, then you convene the ARC and you exit the student from special education. That's my pre-pandemic response. And that's probably still, quite frankly, the way the law is written. However, it's a real bad look.
I agree. I mean, because they're needy kids. And I know whether it's a month from now or 2 months from now, they're going to be back. And
yeah. And then you got to start all over with
All over.
resources that you don't have and time that you don't have, and for what, right? And to what end? If there were some benefit add, then I could see that. But you know, the other side of that is, you know, there's the compensatory education component that you could have that conversation. Quite frankly, though, I think if we ever get to the other side of normal, then you know, many parents and grandparents who are worn out with this are probably just going to try to find their lives back instead of trying to figure out how to get kids, you know, compensatory services on, you know, during evenings and weekends and summer, and because we're all going to need some downtime.
Right.
And so you can certainly have those conversations. You know, I go back to my, you know, document, because, and should this happen, you know, should you get to, I don't know, January, February, and you haven't serviced kids for 3-4 months because word of mouth was, you know, little Greta's mom said, no, we don't want him. No, thank you. But that's all you've got. And then they file a due process in January. You don't have a leg to stand on, quite frankly.
Right.
So, yeah. So like I said, there's the pre-pandemic response, which is probably the more accurate response. But I think you're going to have to tackle this thing on a case-by-case situation and do everything you can and document, and make multiple. I mean, I can't even stress the word multiple enough, that you attempt to reach folks in whatever manner it is. And like, you know, Kentucky School for the Blind and School for the Deaf, you know, their schools, we have parents who are feeling the same burnout. So some of them have said, yeah, we'll do packets. Okay, that's fine. You know, while others are saying, no, you know, we want virtual. And then some, you know, are face-to-face small group instruction, which looks very different than what a, you know, a typical IEP in a face-to-face environment would look. And so it's about trying to find all of those platforms and all of that media that you can access, even if it's an old-fashioned phone call. You know, it's something. It's a good faith effort.
I mean, it just broke my heart. We had a little girl this week who snuck and tried to log in to her classroom because she knew they were live, and she had to hurry and get off because her mom came and didn't want her on it. I thought, you know, how sad. And, you know, part of it's, to me, it's educational neglect. And
well, I will have to say too, if any of you were a part of Julie Weatherly's her September meeting that she had with us, mirrors your response to a T, Greta. I mean, as far as during the pandemic, you know, do everything in your power. Especially, she stressed if you know it's because of the pandemic, right? That she's hesitant about saying revoking services. Because you need to get them back on track. So exactly what you said, Greta. So I think that is what everybody is saying currently, you know, for us to keep in touch. And I know the teachers get frustrated, the principals get frustrated, because they're like, well, 3 calls or 3, no, 3's not enough. And, you know, right now. And so, yep, push on for sure. And I really do tell the teachers to keep a list of all of those students, and I run the enrollment report all the time, like weekly, to make sure that we go back and look for those children, and follow up with them even at the end of the year to see where they are. So.
Is it appropriate to have an ARC and document that the contact will be less? So we were doing lots of minutes, and so if they got daily contact versus trying to contact them every day and not getting through and doing that continually, having an ARC and reducing that contact to once a week.
So I think the key here is to just be super careful about reducing minutes in light of the pandemic, right? Because the IP still has to be driven by the unique needs of the student. But obviously, if we're in a fully virtual setting, the delivery of special education may look very different, and it may be, you know, I think we've talked about this before, maybe on a webcast or something, that you being the teacher works with the student providing specially designed instruction less frequently because it's more intensely, and so that way it kind of equals out, if you will, because if we're in a group of 4 or 5 kids receiving, you know, an hour a day or something for specially designed instruction, and we back that up during the virtual instruction to say we're going to work individually one-on-one, and so it may be twice a week now for an hour because you're getting that full hour instead of, you know, 10 or 15 minutes because you're not splitting time, you know, individualizing from one student to the next. And I think those types of things can be made, but at the end of the day, you just have to make sure that whatever you do, it still accounts for the delivery of FAPE to each individual student. So it may look very different, and what you're saying may be exactly the way it looks for some students, but you just have to be careful that you don't get inadvertently trapped in a cookie cutter approach to that all kids get X because we're in a virtual platform, because that will trip you up and get you in some trouble.
I want
You
to
know, moving.
clarify, we weren't switching minutes. So we believe the minutes they have are appropriate for them.
Gotcha.
They're not receiving any services. They're refusing to answer their phones. And so if they get daily minutes, we are calling every day, week after
Gotcha.
week after week after week, with no response and no answer. At any point, is it appropriate to reduce the number of attempts to call for services and not adjust the IEP, because we still believe those are the minutes those children deserve and need.
Gotcha.
But can we reduce the number of attempts we're making? And then if we make contact, then by all means, we're going to say, can we call again tomorrow and try that? But is there a way to meet with that ARC and document that we're reducing the number of attempts that are made?
That's a
Or
really
do you
good
recommend
question,
every
Jody.
single day, week after week after week after week?
That's a really good question, and I think that's going to be, and I'm trying to think about this through a formal complaint investigator lens. Like if I were looking at something like that, I think the surrounding facts would come into play more than simply, did you call every single day for 6 weeks or 8 weeks? You know, there's going to be a
Did you
cluster
do
of,
home visits? Did you
yeah,
do all that? Yeah, and we're doing
yeah.
all of that too. So
So I
I
think if
just,
you, you know, if you have facts supporting good faith effort and multiple attempts, then I don't know that there's any requirement that says you have to call every single day. But here would be the other side of that, and I'm just throwing out some counter argument here for you to consider. If you were able to get the parents on the line for an ARC meeting and then have the conversation about reducing minutes, could there have been a different conversation that you could have had during that ARC meeting? You know, like, you know, if you can get the parent, what would be their willingness? You know, you could have those kinds of conversations and document it in parent concerns. And that's a place where you could document everything that the parent's saying no to, and then providing FAPE to the best of your ability.
I agree. I will tell you in those circumstances, they haven't come to the meetings either. So, but yeah.
Certainly challenging time for everybody, and we're all thinking outside the box, and working in, you know, a law that was written in the 70s.
Can I throw another question out there around
Sure.
eligibility? So we signed, districts are signing consent to evaluate. They withdraw their students to either homeschool or private school. We know there are many reasons why that's occurring across the state, and will not allow us access to do the evaluation ARC attempts have been made, they don't come, is it okay to with notice to basically stop that evaluation in an ARC until the parent will allow us contact with a student?
Is it an initial or reeval?
There's probably some of each. I can't, unless I ask specifically that. I can't speak for everybody.
You might consider doing a review of records for those reevals. An initial is going to be really hard to do if you can't access it. And we can talk about those like individually as you have individual questions about those. If you want to give me a call or Veronica or Sylvia to just chat about those, we can certainly help you troubleshoot to the best of our ability on some of those. Because it's going to be so fact specific per kid, it's going to be really hard to just say, do this, not that. That's the great thing about special ed, isn't it? That it's there's no standard answer. It's always, it depends.
Greta, wouldn't you be, well, if they sign consent, wouldn't you be hesitant for an initial though? If you can, I mean, how would you get a hold of that child without, I mean, consent to eval and then there, I don't know. I would be
And
hesitant.
absolutely no access.
On an initial, I don't know how you're going to do it other than, and if you've already got consent signed and nobody's revoking consent, you still have your 60 days to work with, which means you have to reconvene that ARC by the end of those 60 days. And then the only thing I think you could probably do is to say that the data was insufficient to determine the student eligible. And if you do that, and folks, I'm speaking off the cuff here. I don't have the regs out in front of me, so I may be totally way off base. I'm just thinking about if I were in your situation, how would I handle it? And that's probably what I would do, because then the district is off the hook, so to speak, for any potential violations of the IDEA, because you got your signed consent, you made all these efforts that would be documented, and then you convene the ARC within those 60 days to say the data is insufficient, therefore the student isn't eligible. Because I don't know how you could, I mean, you can't determine a student eligible if you don't have the data.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way I think of handling your 60-day timeline, knowing full well, though, that you may indeed, once you have access to these students, have some child find responsibilities to reassess. And I don't think there's anything wrong with documenting that in the conference summary, because those are the facts. That you planned for this evaluation, the district made multiple attempts, the district was unable to reach the child, and the data is insufficient.
And we did all that with a certified letter, but we didn't do an eligibility. So we may need to go back and do the eligibility form for that.
Yeah,
I had one of those. I had an initial, but other people have had other things. So
yeah, I'd probably conduct the ARC meeting, go through the process, and then document all of that. Otherwise, if somebody's looking at the file without having your knowledge in their head, they wouldn't know. It just looks like it's incomplete.
Yeah, it's in the conference summary, but
Gotcha.
we didn't do that eligibility form. So we will go back and do that. I have one more.
Yeah.
I'm full of them. That's what happens with big districts. Students who have gone out to homeschool and private school, and their eligibility and or their IEP is expiring while they are out. When they return, and I looked, back at case law, and it's gone both ways, but when they return, if we have not exited them out, can we start them in our IEP even though their IEP has expired if it's within their eligibility? And what if it's not within their eligibility 3 years? What if that also expired?
That's a good question. I would need to do a little a little research on that
Okay.
before I say for sure. And again, I think that's going to be fact specific. Here would be my hesitancy on using all of the data that you have, because if you're looking at within that eligibility period, you're looking at 3 years. If you had a student who was evaluated and determined eligible in 2018 or 2019, that's pre-pandemic, which means a lot in their lives could have changed that you may not be aware of, that could impact eligibility criteria. You know, you think social emotional, adaptive skills, some of the things that, you know, if you're isolated, you know, let's say you're an only child and both your parents maybe are working healthcare, you know, so there may be no situation for you to practice any, you know, social skills, or interact with peers, very limited interaction with peers, then that could have impacted that student's performance, particularly if you're looking at MMD kids, or, you know, kids that may have social emotional or adaptive functioning skill deficits. So in those situations, I'd be super careful about using old data, so to speak, even though it would be within the 3 years. You know, at the same time, if you've got a kid, and this is where you're going to have those ARC decisions on what to do, you know, what you should or should not use. But you know, in the same thought of that, if you've got a kid that's been out 2 weeks and was evaluated 6 months ago, it doesn't really make much sense to reevaluate it, right? So you know, again, I'm more than happy to talk to you about them, you know, case by case, and help troubleshoot. But I think you're going to have to really rely on the ARC to determine, you know, does it have sufficient data to make decisions that's up to date and considers all the needs of the student.
But even if you reevaluate, are we okay to service under a plan from when they were last there while we reevaluate? Because I feel that's safer than saying we're not going to service, even though that it had expired.
So then I think what you're saying would be very similar to, say, like an out-of-state kid moving back in, where you say we're going to do a comparable, we're going to provide comparable services while we're going through this evaluation. Because that's the requirement for an out-of-state kid. Like if I'm eligible in Ohio and I move into Kentucky, then the district's required to provide comparable services while conducting an initial evaluation. So I think you have that ARC meeting and then plan that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Okay.
I mean, as a matter of fact, I think that shows that demonstrates the district is providing a good faith effort at educating the child, because you probably know the kid's got needs, right? And so then you're making good faith effort, you're providing comparable services while you're going through the evaluation, which would probably be considered an initial evaluation at that point, since you're not reevaluating, you know, kid's been out. I think that's, and again, knee-jerk reaction here. I would need to do some research to make sure I'm spot on, but I think it sounds very similar to like out-of-state kids.
And Greta, I want to say there was a Dear Colleague letter somewhere about that, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably from the Katrina era, maybe.
Yeah, it could have been. I think there was. If I find it, Jody, I'll send it to you. But
and we'll look as well, Jody. We can get.
So any other guidance
that. Yeah.
You have on that would be great, because we'll have quite a few of those coming back to us.
I mean, my direction is you err on the side of the child no matter what. So it's not going to hurt you to provide services with an expired IEP state of Kentucky, even with, you know, if it's over 3 years, you immediately service them and put them on a reeval and put them at the top of the list. You know, so, which our list is, you know, huge, but still the top of the list is still the top of the list when they come in, right? So I don't think we'll ever get in trouble for servicing a child. I don't, at least in
that was my thought.
Mm-hmm. Especially, I think if you talk about the harmful effects when you're talking about, you know, when you're having the ARC, then, when the parents come in, I think if you talk about harmful effects, if you do service the child, especially those kids that are resourced a lot of the day, those are the ones I worry about most when they don't have an up-to-date IEP or evaluation, because you're pulling them out of the general environment. But, you have to look at those. But, most of the time you can look at the history of the child and make those determinations.
Yeah, and those I usually feel like are the more obvious ones. It's those SLD kids that have been out, that only had 2 goals, and I don't know. So
well, and
those
I
are a
can tell
little
you with
harder.
the pandemic now, all kids need acceleration plans, right? Every single child does. So,
Yep.
Good questions.
I have one more question, and that is there still a DoSE Institute on March the 9th?
It's a really good question. And I think Carla has hopped off. So again, full transparency here. Carla and I just discussed this week. Oh wait, she's still actually on the line. Sorry, my fault, Carla. We just discussed this briefly next week because everything is in the plans moving forward. She's got the hotel contract, and then, boom, look at where our numbers are. And it's not looking like things are going to be under control by then. And there's a quite expensive cancellation clause in the contract should we go ahead and sign it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Oh, good. You haven't signed it yet.
We have not signed it.
No.
We have not. That's why we paused to look at it. So
I don't think I'd sign anything right now.
thank
No.
you. That's the purpose of an advisory group. I appreciate that feedback. So
Yeah.
then we can say that we solicited your input and you agreed.
I do think that it would be great to have, that was awesome. The DoSE Institute was awesome. And I do think that it serves a great purpose and there's a great need. But I think to take that risk financially right now and put your name on the line. But that was another question from my group. I love my group. They send me with assigned questions and I just write them down and ask them. But if you haven't signed off on anything like that, is there a chance, Greta, of maybe doing something virtually, maybe something limited where there's different, I don't know, is there maybe an opportunity for that?
Yeah, I certainly think we talked about that initially. I think we actually sent out a survey and people were like, no more virtual.
Gotcha.
And
we're all tired, but at the same time, I don't know. The connections are really great and the content was great. But even if you do try to plan it in person, then there's a really good chance people won't even be allowed to come due to the numbers in their areas,
Yeah, and we certainly would not want to be a super spreader event. That would not be a good look.
Not hosted by the state, I wouldn't say.
No, we can't do that.
No, especially the special ed department. We'll let somebody else have that award. So probably, probably going to push back. Hopefully by, late summer, early fall, we can get to some level of normal. I just think it's, the conversation we had was that, it's just really early to go ahead and sign this, put our dollars on the line, knowing where we are today, and that it appears that we're going to continue to escalate. There doesn't seem to be a decline in the near future. So yeah. And I appreciate any thoughts that you guys have. If anybody feels differently, please let us know. Or if you think it's best to push back, we want that input.
Yeah, I'd gotten an email. This is Carla. I had actually gotten an email from the hotel this morning asking where the signed contract was again. And she had actually told me that, well, we've added a new clause. If you cancel 30 days out, we've decreased the amount that you would have to pay, where you would lose less funds. But I'm not comfortable with signing anything whatsoever with it being in March. It's, we're in the cold weather season. Everybody's going to be cooped up in close together, close corners. It's not gonna, I don't really look for it to get a whole lot better, so. But, I mean, there's always, I guess I could put a date, move the date out if that's what you would suggest, but I just don't see the March thing happening. I don't want to do it. I'm not comfortable whatsoever doing it.
The last one was in August, correct? Didn't we do that in early August?
It was September. It was September. Yeah.
Carla, I think we all agree that you don't need to sign that contract.
All right. It's not then. We'll let her down easy.
Let her down easy.
It's a big contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell her if she wants to say that if you cancel within 30 days, there's no penalty, then you might could sign that.
We haven't gotten there yet.
They're probably getting pretty desperate, all of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel bad for them. I do. But it may get to that. I don't know. But we're not there yet.
Okay, that's it for me, really. My whole list has been taken care of. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, gossip? That's always my favorite with my team. What gossip is out there so I can clarify, so I can clean it up right now.
That's awesome.
It's usually about me. No.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Kim. It's all about you in Jefferson County. That's all I have.
It's all gossip.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
So if we're good, we'll go to the next thing on the agenda. Greta, are you good for that?
I am. Thank you.
Okay. And I think the next thing on the agenda is our schedule for starting in January, what our meeting schedule is going to be.
And Kim, I will share my screen and bring up our schedule so that you can use that to go by. Okay. And so the top part of the document shows our 2020 meetings, which were March, May, August, and November. And the bottom part is proposed. And I moved the March meeting to February, and that gives 2 months in between each meeting, and used Wednesday, the middle of the week, as a place to start. And Kim, I'm going to let you kind of lead the conversation, and I can adjust on the document as you all speak.
Perfect. Well, first of all, I do believe that, having those 4 meetings, I think that has worked out well. Mondays for me are not great days to have these meetings. So I like the idea of having a Wednesday or having Wednesdays as our meeting time. I can flip morning or afternoon and make it work. So I think there's a few things to look at as far as the 4 dates, the time of day, and the day of the week. So those look good to me. Is there the only question I would have is the May and the August, looking at the beginning and end of school year for some of you, if that would be something you want to look at, but so I'm open for suggestions.
And then also keep in mind, hopefully we will have CEC again next year. And November 17th is the week prior to that.
Okay.
I like the ideas of Wednesday as well, as opposed to Monday. Monday's hard.
1 to 3 afternoons.
That works for me.
Wednesdays are perfect for me.
Anyone else? Do you think 4 times a year is good?
Yeah, I think we start there, and if for some reason we need to meet again, we can.
Okay. I think this has been a fantastic group. I definitely look forward to it, that's for sure. I miss being in person though. Especially when
Maybe
you guys
again
turn your
someday.
cameras on. I can't see you.
All right, so I will definitely send out a calendar invite for those dates, Kim, to get that
Okay.
on the calendar for everyone. And the last thing I need to mention, I do have an exit slip, and keep in mind it is very helpful for us to receive your feedback so that we can analyze what was discussed and then also prepare for upcoming meetings. So I will put, let me copy this link real quick and I will put it in the chat for you. I will also send you an email. But let me put it in the chat real quick to make it easy. All right, so the exit slip link is located in the chat, and if you can take time to fill that out, we would appreciate it. I will send an email with that same link too. So back to you, Kim, to wrap up.
Okay. Any further questions or good on the dates? I'm going to just repeat those dates real quick. February 17th, May 26th, August 18th, and November 17th for next meetings starting in January of 2021. That's hard to say already. Whew, we're getting up there. And if there's no further questions or comments, we will move to adjourn.
All right, Kim, I was going to
Good.
say thank you for being our fearless leader, and then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Tracy. Can I have a second?
I'll second, Greta.
Thank you, Greta. Okay, all in favor of adjourning, and I think we've added some people on, so let me go through the list. Wendy.
Yes.
Barry. Okay, Greta.
Yep.
Tracy.
Yes.
Larry Joe joined us. Jody.
Yes.
Mandy.
Yes.
Okay, and Troy.
Yes.
And Kim. Yes. All right. The motion passes. We are adjourned. Don't forget to fill out the form, the exit slip. So see you all in a couple months. Have a great holiday. I like to say Merry Christmas. I know that we're not supposed to say it, but Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy
New Year.
Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas.
Happy Thanksgiving and
Thanks
happy
a lot, everyone.
holidays and happy winter break.
Happy everything, right?
Happy everything. Enjoy.
Everybody take care.
Thank you.
Happy life.
Thank you.
Yes, you're right, Chris.